hopefully it's a little more.
Yeah, hopefully.
But it's not going to have snow, and that's going to make me really depressed.
Well, it's better on the road when there's not snow all the time.
Yeah.
It's better for filmmaking too, and there's not snow everywhere.
I know. I just get really depressed when winter doesn't have snow or doesn't get cold. Like, it just doesn't feel like winter. It doesn't feel like Christmas. It just feels like Santa forgot us or something. Like, winter is just like, no, I'm skipping you guys this year.
All right. Well, thanks, V and Brian, for getting here today. Hopefully more people come in. If not, oh well. We'll just go through the quiz and record it and see what you guys come up with. But first, I'm going to say that the 3 people who won the LCloud Awards this year, so they get $25 if they want. For communication.
She's joining in a moment.
What?
Chisholm said she's joining in a moment. Raphael said he's tied up, and Sarah said she's currently at work. I think half of those are just afraid of the quiz, but who knows?
Probably. For the communication again this year, this semester, it is V. V always responds to the emails. She lets us know when she receives the emails or any of the exercises or anything like that. And if she ever has any questions, she lets us know. So she's always going back and forth with communication.
Me and Coda have tried to guess theories of maybe she works super near her computer, or maybe she has her notifications turned on her phone for her email, because she always responds so quickly. We're always like, oh my gosh, how'd you do that?
But yeah, V, congratulations. You won communication again for being punctual, being on time to the meetings, coming at or before 9, which, some people have not been doing this semester. But for that, it goes to Brian. Brian, you've been showing up early or on time for the past, for as many of the meetings, more so than everyone else. Close second was Mel. Mel came in second place for that, but she didn't have as many dates where she came in early or on time as Brian. So Brian, you win for punctuality. Thank you.
Yes, I want to thank the writers. I want to thank my manager.
And for being active. He's not here right now, so he's not that active. But it's Vish. Vish won for being active. He participated in the most of the exercises and activities this semester. And so he wins for being active. So if any of you guys want the $25, you just let us know after the meeting. We can send it through you through PayPal, Cash App, or Venmo. So congratulations, everybody. Thanks for doing that. Everyone else, next semester, start doing that stuff more. Whether you win it or not, punctuality lets us all start earlier so we can get done faster. Being active makes it more interesting to see what everyone came up with and what everyone was doing. Next semester, we'll have a lot of stuff based on production design. So that'll be interesting to see if everybody tries out with that type of stuff and sees what they come up with.
I am so excited. I'm so excited for next semester. Because this semester, I don't know if you guys know, but, I struggled a little bit,
We'll see with this quiz coming out. And being active, so it just makes it more interesting. And then being communicative, it helps for us to know if you received the emails, if not, so you're not waiting till last minute to ask for the emails or ask for any questions you might have. Just ask them right away, because it makes it easier on us if you don't understand something than just waiting until the end. So thank you guys for doing that, and please keep doing that, and everyone else start doing that next semester more if you can. All right, moving on. You guys ready for the quiz?
As I'll ever be. Yep. Yeah.
All right. I'm going to start with Priscilla. I'm just going to go in order on my screen. It's Priscilla v. Brian. So Priscilla.
Yeah.
With creating the budget, there are 2 main phases. The blank budget, which is used to try to gain financing, and the second phase, which is just a detailed breakdown of the budget. What is the first phase called? The blank
preliminary budget.
What was that?
The preliminary budget.
Woo! Bling, bling, bling. V, in a preliminary budget, you'll typically just use a blank, which is an overview of the cost of the production.
Oh, the top sheet?
Yeah, ding, top
Oh,
sheet.
yay.
All right. This is an editing question. Brian, what is a spotting session in editing?
When you go through and you find things that you want to revise.
Yes. And what could those things be?
You sounded nervous. I was like, what the heck?
It could be anything like, oh, I just want to make this shot, not shot, but this shot longer. It's hard to describe it, but anything.
Yeah, there could be a
Spotting.
spotting session for anything. The main use cases are usually for sound effects, music, and ADR.
Yeah.
And if you're on a larger team, you'll have a lot more spotting sessions where the producer, the director, and whatever team member they're trying to like spot things for will all sit together and point out things like maybe we need the visual effect needs to start here at this exact moment and go into 10 seconds later, and they'll timestamp everything so that everyone knows exactly when to insert their needed piece of the film.
Just
Yeah,
so you guys know, when Coda does these, he does ask for my help at like coming up with questions or ideas and stuff, but he purposefully doesn't tell me all of them just so he can have the satisfaction of seeing if I actually remember this crap or not. And
I
also,
actually want to know if I don't think I would remember some of this stuff, honestly.
yeah, and also I'm learning too. Like we went into this with him knowing a lot more than me about this stuff, so I do enjoy it. I just wish he would give me a little bit of a heads up sometimes.
Priscilla, we actually went over this with the fill in the blanks as well. So for filmmaking, what are the 3 main camera types that are used currently?
The mirrorless, the mirrored, and the
What is the mirrored called? There's like a specific name. It's a jumble of letters.
sorry, try not to cuss. I forgot. I suck at terms.
All
was trying-
right, what's the third one that you were gonna say?
Oh, that is correct. Okay.
What's the third one that you were gonna say?
The cinema camera.
Yep. Okay, you got 2 of them. Well, come on. The other one's the oldest one.
Yes.
What?
Just
Brian
think-
always talks about him. He made
Yeah.
his early
The
films with the first generation. What?
The DSLRs? Or
Yeah.
I was thinking of film. Like I was thinking of like the film cameras in my head.
Yeah, I was
That's what-
saying what are used currently, and these are the 3 main
Well,
ones. that
they
used
still are
currently.
used quite a bit. They're making a resurgence now.
It's not used as much as DSLRs, especially not on the
Yeah.
independent scene.
But they're making a resurgence in the film scene, like the major film scene, because of the crisp look that it's getting, and people enjoy it. Just like when vinyl was making a comeback, turns out that the older style is just more appealing to people.
You're not wrong. You're not.
Yeah, I compare it to vinyl because I know a lot more about music than I do about film sometimes. So I compare it to that. Like I feel like we like the sound of old vinyl. It just sounds more crisp. And I feel like with film, a lot of people, like at least in my opinion, like when I've seen the differences, I don't feel like it's a huge difference, but I do understand for specific looks why it would look better, because the grainy look, the softer tones, for aesthetic reasons, a lot of people prefer it.
Yeah. All right, V. What is something you want to look for in camera specs for filmmaking? So when you're buying a camera, what is something you might want to look for in the camera specs?
Like the lenses, to check and see like what the lenses are about, like the aperture, I think.
Yeah, the f-stop, like how fast the camera is, how wide open it can open.
Yeah, and you want to look for maybe any, well, depending on if it's used or new, you want to look for any like damage, like scratches on the lens, and You want to look for, oh gosh, like the resolution, like what kind of camera it is, like what you're gonna
Yep.
need it for, like if it's gonna
Resolution,
match.
definitely. Is it HD? Is it 4K, 6K? What, what's the resolution? That's one, definitely.
And I don't know. I mean, I do know, but there's so much. There's so much to
Yeah.
that.
And with lenses, I would say, yeah, not lenses itself, because that's a different piece that goes with the camera. But if the camera has interchangeable lenses, if it can change the lens out, that's always something you want with filmmaking. So you can, change your focal length and all of that.
Yeah. You want more answers from that, or?
Oh, no, it's okay.
There's
Does Priscilla or Brian, you guys want to add anything in? That was good, V. I was just looking for like
Isn't
one or two.
shutter speed this similar to? Wait, did she say shutter speed? I think she did, right? But that's
Shutter
more for
speed?
like a photography.
Oh no, I didn't. The frames per second or something.
Frame rate. Yep.
Yeah.
Oh,
So the frame rate, like how fast do you need to do slow motion? You need to make sure you're getting a camera that can do a high enough frame rate so that you can shoot at a higher frame rate and slow it down in post production so it's smooth and it's not.
Yeah. So it would be frame rate for film for like cinema cameras as opposed to. I always think shutter speed, but that's more photography, right?
Well, shutter speed goes with film too, but you usually just double it whenever you're doing your frame rate
Yeah.
to have a 180 degree
Yeah.
shutter angle.
Yeah.
Resolution, megapixels. Let's see, lens mount capability. What else is another good one?
How heavy
4K,
it is compared
yeah.
to your. Yeah.
the weight.
yeah.
Yep.
There was
Bit
something
depth,
else.
which is the megapixels. Bit depth,
Dynamic
how many,
range.
the colors, 8, 10, 12 bit. Chroma subsampling,
Cropped or if it's uncropped, like the sensor,
sensor size, yes.
because it will affect your like how your lenses will look with it.
It'll affect the crop factor and how zoomed in each lens focal length looks on your specific camera. Or
Yeah.
if your lens will even attach to your camera, which is another reason why you want to make sure.
Compatibility, yeah, compatibility is a big thing.
The chroma subsampling, or how much color it, like what the codec is taking out. So if it's 422, 444 being the best, or raw, 422 being the next best, then like 420 or 411. And whether it can shoot raw or log, what kind of, is it only able to shoot in LUT or already baked in colors, or are you able to shoot raw or log where it's going to have a wider dynamic range and you're able to mess with it in post-production? Its dynamic range, how much light it can capture from its brightest to its darkest point. So if you're pointing it at a window indoors and the indoors is going to be darker than outside, how much of that is it going to be able to show in camera, and how much is it going to look like overblown highlights outside if you're exposing for inside, or crushed blacks if you're exposing for the outside. Interchangeable lenses, sensor size, frame rates, any additional functions that it might have, like built-in ND filters, monitors with the functions, or do you have to buy a separate monitor for it? Is it waterproof? Does it have an LCD screen with anti-sun glare? Little things like that. What kind of memory does it take? SD cards, CEF cards, CFast cards. That's going to
Goodness, it's a lot of crap you have to look for, isn't it?
the price. yeah, definitely. The codecs it does, whatever its native ISO is going to determine if it's better in low light or not. What kind of batteries it uses, whether it's able to plug into the wall, its form factor, which is how heavy it is and what shape it is, which determines what you're able to put it on, how durable it is, and other things like that. So yeah, there's definitely a whole lot to look for, but I was just looking for a few of them pointed out, which was good. All right, Brian, what does ATL stand for on a budget? Oh, V asked something in the thing. Hold on. She said, would one of the least concerns be the internal mic? Yeah, because you normally want to use an external mic if you can. So like, can it plug a mic into it is one thing, but if it has an internal mic in the camera, those are never really going to be very good. So if you're able to, you definitely want to get an
Or they're going to
external mic.
reach as far as you might want either, because depending on what you're shooting, it's going to be farther away. So the mic isn't really used as much.
Yeah, because if you're shooting from a 100mm lens, you're going to be pretty far from the subject and you won't be capturing very good sound, especially if you're outside, it's windy, you know, whatever. So that's usually why they don't use them as much. But okay, go ahead, Brian. What is ATL?
Is there above the line or below the line?
Above the line, yep.
Above the line.
ATL, above the line. All right, Priscilla, who is or can be considered above the line? What job
The
roles?
main actors, right?
Yes, it can be.
The director,
Mm-hmm.
The cinematographer,
Occasionally. Occasionally,
Yeah,
yeah. Not
kinda
often,
rare.
but sometimes. Depending on if they're
Okay.
like a big name. Like Roger Deakins is huge, so he would be considered that, but a lesser known DP, not really.
okay. I would like to say the sound mixer or the
Nope.
sound tech,
Oh
but
God, no.
I feel
It's
like
above
they
my
should be.
nah, it's above my pay
Ryan's-
grade.
I feel like
Above
they
my
have
pay
to
grade.
be
Nope,
The
the
amount
sound
of
mixer
work
is
that-
not.
the
No.
editor.
The editor,
No.
nope.
Really?
Definitely, that's definitely
Okay,
above my pay
That's
grade.
interesting.
Right, that's like below the
interesting.
line. And it's
That is so interesting. I know it's not because I remember now, but it's just in my brain. It just makes sense that it would be because they're such crucial roles. So I'm like, I
Okay,
feel-
well, think of
But-
it like this. When you look at a movie poster, all the important people are on that
And
poster.
you're the writer then.
Yep, one is the writer, and then the other
So the
thing is the
the
job you had on
actor-
our production.
So the writers, the directors, the actors, and the main actors, and sometimes the DP. Those are the 5 main ones then, because they're the only ones that
You're missing
they
one.
give, they
One
give a
in-
crap.
Very important one.
The ones who put it all together.
Oh, the producers.
Yeah.
Right. The producer. Wait, but it's not all producers that are above the line, right?
Executive
It's
It's the
producers.
producer or the executive
Okay,
producer, not
right.
the
Executive producer
line
and the
producer and
producer and
associate
the-
producers are below the line.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Right.
All right.
So the ones that are on the poster, thank you, Brian. I'll remember it like that. That's a good way to memorize it.
Yeah, they're
ones
the
that-
ones with the most creative input in the project. So the screenwriter's the one, obviously they're the first
Well, the
ones to
editor's
have
got a
creative
crap
input.
ton of creative input, but they're not on it.
What?
Yep. It's a very underrated, just like sound mixing and boom operating, very underrated.
Yeah.
The editor's got creative input, but
Underappreciated.
they're not on the poster.
Right. Well, because the director and the producer are technically going to tell them if it's approved or not. So
Yeah, but if
it
you
is
got
still that line of succession.
but an editor can save a film just like he can destroy a film. But yeah, underrated.
True.
If there's anything I've learned this semester is that editors are extremely underrated.
Yeah. Post-production in general, especially with like how much people feel like they can just, oh yeah, we'll get to post-production after, and they don't try to save any money for it or anything.
Yeah.
All right, V. Which of these determines the compression rate or the quality? A codec or a container?
Oh gosh.
You said a compression rate.
Yeah.
The quality of the final image is determined by one of these, the codec or the container.
I remember you talking about this. Oh, okay. Sorry, I know it's taking a while. The compression rate, the codec or the container?
No, sorry, it is the codec. Codec is the compressor decompressor. That will determine how compressed it gets. And that was what determines the quality. So that's where people sometimes mix it up, because the container is like the MP4 or the MOV file. So that doesn't actually determine how much of the image is like getting compressed down and how much of the quality is getting taken out. The codec is determining how compressed it's getting, and then how it's going to uncompress it back to show it fully again. So whenever you're talking about those things, you always want to be looking for the codec and not really the container, because the container doesn't really matter as much for the quality of your project.
Okay,
Ryan,
thank you.
what is a format? What does it consist of?
It's hard to word it, right?
Yeah,
Something hard to
very is.
explain. Like, you know what it is, but you have to like explain it, and that's the hard part.
Okay, so I want to say like the way everything is put together from what we just went over with the compressor and the codecs and stuff like that, correct?
Yep, it's the container and the codec and like how it's all put together, pretty much. Like you said, it's a combination of those two things which determines what the format is. So again, the format isn't going to determine what the quality is per se. It's actually the codec that is in that format that is going to matter. So you don't, when you hear a format, you want to actually check what that format holds, like what the codec is inside of there, to see what kind of compression it's doing. Because knowing the format alone isn't going to tell you that information. So just remember that, everybody, like, because that was one of the hardest things for me to learn back when I started, is the compression stuff, because it really determines how good that thing's going to look, how ugly it is, you know, and how, if it has like weird lines and all this other like low quality stuff you don't want to have, when you could have a high quality thing just from exporting it to a different format or a different codec, or recording in a different codec anyway. All right, Priscilla,
Yes.
we just went over this again in the fill in the blanks. So which is better for editing, intra-frame or inter-frame compression?
Oh crap. Crap. I know what the different types of compression, but I don't remember which is which.
Well, then there's no use in knowing the different types.
And I know what the difference between the two. I just don't know which one's
I'm just
called
joking around. I'm just joking.
intra-frame.
Correct. Intra-frame holds the details of each frame individually as its own picture, pretty much. Inter-frame just looks at the differences between a certain number of frames. Like every 5 frames, it might look at what moved in the frame and what stayed the same, and then just try to match the new frame's movement to the old frame's data to not really use new data each time. So it has to look back at old frames to compile it together to show you what it's supposed to be showing you. So it takes a little longer to process.
Yeah.
But that's why intra-frame compression is a lot larger for file size, and why recording in it can take up a lot more space, and why that's not usually, well, it is now starting to become more popular to shoot in intra-frame compression with like an external recorder. But typically speaking, you'll record in inter-frame, and then you will use an intermediary codec when you're editing. You'll change it over to an intra-frame codec when you're editing, so that it doesn't lag your computer down. V, what are 4 kinds of film lights? The 4 that we talked about in the fill in the blanks Monday specifically.
Doesn't it feel
You guys see why everyone skips this meeting?
but doesn't it feel like he's kind of like, I know you're not doing this, honey, but it kind of gives that feeling of like that thing that we talked about last Monday. Therefore, you should remember. Like,
No, I'm just pointing it out. Like we just talked about it Monday, so like it's not something new.
no, I know. It just feels like guilt to me. It's like, in other words, we
No,
talked about
it's
it.
fine if you guys don't know it. Yeah, as long as you guys remember it when you're talking about it, that's all that really matters.
Tungsten,
Yep.
LED.
Yep.
Um,
Hard.
lights.
I'll give you Kino Flow. Kino Flow is another one.
Yep.
That one doesn't count. That's not one of them, is it?
It is, but it's hard. That's I just had trouble remembering it too, and I'm like, oh my god. And then
Yeah, now you're just confusing her because there was 4 of them, and I don't think that was one. I think.
I appreciate it. Yeah, that's all I got.
You remember what's the big ones are called? Like the ones that are used to imitate the sun. They give off more of a daylight.
I was thinking about that one. That was the one on the movie we saw. I just don't know what it's called.
Okay. The name of it is HMI.
Oh wow. Okay.
And then the 4th one would have been fluorescent.
I kept thinking of halogen lights. I don't know why it's stuck in my brain.
Yeah, you said that last time too.
I know. I kept it just got stuck in my brain. I'm like, that's not
V,
it.
do you know which ones are the most popular on independent sets?
The LED.
Yep. They're the most versatile and the cheapest compared to the others at the same quality levels anyway. Well, not at the same quality levels, but they are a lot cheaper and there's a lot more of them, more options, versatility, and they can do a lot more functionality. But they don't usually give off as much light as tungsten and HMIs, which is why those are still used on bigger sets.
And they don't never look quite the same.
Yeah, they're never quite as accurate with the color accuracy. All right, Brian, what is CRI for lights? When you're looking at lights, what is a CRI and what is it for?
Isn't it like rating the true value of a color when the light reflects off of a subject? You're trying to get to determine the true value of it, or the true color, should I say? Because certain lights have different temperatures, and pretty much you're just measuring the way the light is like reflecting off an object.
Yep.
So
it stands for color rendering index.
There it is. I know color.
Yeah, and like you said, basically it's just comparing it to the sun, which they say is it has a CRI rating of 100 because that's the way we see light. That's the way we see everything in our world with the sunlight. So it's comparing the lights, like you said, to the sun on a scale of 1 to 100 for the accuracy or the true color, like you were saying, how that light is reflecting that color. Is it making it look more green? Is it making it look more red? Is it making it look like the sun would make it look? And giving it a rating based on how accurate it is. Which is why when you're buying LEDs especially, you want to make sure to look at that and make sure that the light you are buying has a CRI rating, because if it doesn't, then it probably means that it is either low or it wasn't rated for it at all because they weren't expecting it to be high, so they didn't want to pay the money to get the test done, which means that it could give off a more green or magenta hue whenever you have the light shining on a subject. Priscilla.
Yeah.
Is lumens or lux more important for film lights?
Lumens? No. The lux.
And why is that?
Crap. Because the lux, oh, because the lux is the level of like brightness, right? How, no, the lumens is brightness. Wait, one is brightness and one is how far it can go, like how wide, how bright.
Yes. Okay, so one is, I'll just show a picture real quick. Lumens is the source, how much it projects outward, but that's in all directions. From this light bulb, it could be shooting behind it, above it, to the side of it. Lux is determining how, maybe from 2 meters away or 3 feet away, or however much the distance is that they give you. How much of
So
that?
one determines how bright it is, the other determines how far that brightness goes, right?
Or just how much of it will hit a certain subject. Like for this instance, the light bulb is going to be shining off in all directions except for down. So it only hits the wall or that subject over there 2 feet away or 3 feet away with that little bit of light. Even though it could have a lot of lumens, it's not hitting that subject because it's going in other directions as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I
That's
see, I
the-
know what they are. I just don't know how to explain.
Right. The main
But
thing
I know-
the main thing to remember if you're buying a light is just lux is more important to know. It'll tell you and like how close it was. If they do a really close distance, then it might not be as bright as you think, as one that has a farther distance that has a little bit less of a lux. If it has a pretty high lux number and it's far away distance, that means it's hitting a bunch of light on there. So you'll have a huge output of light going onto your subject. So the main thing to remember is just the lux for lights and comparing those numbers and the distances when you're comparing different lights to buy.
Yeah, because you can have a light that's super bright, but if it can't, like, if that brightness doesn't extend that distance, then there's really no point.
Yeah.
I mean,
it depends on if you want it close or not. But
Yeah, it depends on the type of film and thing you're doing. But more often than not, yeah.
It depends on where you're shooting. So like if you were shooting indoors, you would want something with less strength. But like if outdoor, you will want more strength so you can bring your lights out further.
Right, because you also might not want it to be too strong on the subject because then it might go behind them, hit all over the wall, and you'd have to do a lot more shaping of the light, blocking it off so it doesn't go in certain directions.
Yeah, or it might not look as natural, it might look too artificial, or it might take away the natural brightness of the area.
Yeah. I mean, you get a light, like I have a light now. I'm just not learning this myself because it's just like you get a light and you're like, oh, it's a good, spotlight. But when you actually use it outside, it's like, oh, it sucks. But then indoors, it's like perfect. But outdoors, it's not so great because the light it escapes.
It just feels blown out, right?
Yeah.
Well, not outside, right? It feels too weak.
Exactly. Too weak. Like.
Okay. I thought it plus the light of the outside would make it like super blown out or something.
Well, the problem is if where you're positioning the subject, the sun's either going to be beside of them, behind them, or in front of them. And behind them, you're going to have something bright enough that it's like having your phone out in the sun. If you have your phone and you're turned away from the sun, it's hard to see your screen. You have to turn up the brightness a lot. Otherwise, you're not going to see what's on the screen because there's so much light coming at it. And so it's like kind of the same concept.
Yeah.
You're competing with other lights, pretty much. That's it.
Yeah, and because it's the sun, you're competing with a lot and a very bright light, depending on the time of day.
Yeah.
V, on most productions, which phase of production will most of your budget go to? Development, pre-production, production, post-production, or distributing?
And yeah, I agree with you. It's like knowing is not enough. He's like, well, why is that? And
I just want to see if you guys know. If you don't, I'll answer it.
No, I know it's good because that way we don't half-ass it or we don't just guess. But still, it's like you're like, do you really know? Let's see. Yeah, it's just like okay.
Okay. You said development, pre-production. You said which phase is most important?
Not most important, but which of the phases will have most of your budget dedicated to it? one of the phases takes up the most in almost every production that you'll do. It's either going to be development, pre-production, production, post-production, or distributing.
Production?
Yeah. Yeah, most people say
Okay.
production takes up the most because, you know, you're paying everybody to be there. You're doing all the production days. You're doing any overtime that might slip through, the camera rentals, you know, everything, the locations, all that stuff is going into production. So planning and doing the post is next, I would say. And then planning it is probably a lot less because you can plan it pretty much yourself. You'll just have to take a lot longer to do it. But on production, you can't really get away with doing it yourself unless you have a small scene or something.
Yeah. I feel like all the emergency, like the just in case money you have to kind of set aside too.
Yep, that too. Actually, that's a good, Brian, what is a contingency plan in a budget?
It's like anything that could possibly come up that does come up, you'd have money for it.
Yep, pretty much what V just said. The emergency money you set aside so that you don't touch it unless you absolutely need it. You can't find it in anywhere else in the budget. You can't rearrange anything to make it work. So then you start taking out of your contingency plan.
As
So.
any filmmaker knows that especially on your first production, more often than not, everything that can go wrong will go wrong.
Yeah, actors get sick or just not come in. And then you have to just, well, my whole day's budget is gone.
Yeah.
Priscilla, when is a budget complete?
When is it complete?
When is a budget completed?
When is it complete? Like, are you talking about in the process of
When are you
creating a
done
budget?
when are you done with the budget?
When are you done creating it?
No, just when are you done with it entirely?
In post-production?
I would say after that. It's a trick
After that.
question.
Oh, true. You also have distributing, and you also have marketing, and you also have
Yeah.
yeah.
Budget's
So
not done until you're done with the whole thing.
Yeah, it's never really done.
It's
There's
actively being adjusted. Like I was just saying with Brian, like sometimes you try to find, you know, the DP comes to you and he says, hey, we need this piece of gear. Ours just broke. And so now you have to find somewhere in the budget to rent out or buy that piece of gear for them. So you take it from somewhere else. So you're always actively adjusting the budget.
Yeah, I feel like until your film is out, is like not even when it's in theaters, because stuff can still appear then. Like, oh, we need to put it in more theaters, or oh, something. I feel like it's never really over until after your film's had its run.
Yeah, I would agree, because especially if you're independent and you're trying to do a festival run, you have to count that into your budget.
Yeah.
So your budget's never really over until you're completely finished with that thing.
Yeah.
Moving on to the next. V, what does the Ripple Edit tool do?
Ripple edit. Is it like a special effect then, maybe?
Nope.
No. Okay.
Close. It's a ripple effect.
Yeah, that's what I was.
It's not really a special effect for your actual footage. It's more for the timeline.
Yeah, he's in the editing question.
Okay.
All right, so the Ripple Edit does this. Normally when you are editing, this doesn't happen. Everything doesn't just get pulled back. If you're editing with the selection tool, it'll just leave a blank gap in between if you are taking part of that clip and taking it away. With the Ripple Edit tool, while you're editing, you can just move over the clip and everything else will adjust backwards so that there's no gaps anywhere. And so it just helps to quicken that space. If you don't do it, it'll end up looking something more like this on the bottom, where there's some gaps in between. And then you have to either minus them out or fill them in with something else. But when using the Ripple Edit, it'll bring everything and adjust it back or forward depending on how you're editing.
Okay, thank you.
That's why I said ripple effect, because when you move the forward clip, the one furthest to the beginning, it affects all the clips behind it and pulls them up and attaches them to or fixes whatever gaps you may have, causing a ripple effect.
Yeah, but it's on the timeline, not on the footage.
Yeah.
Brian, what does the rolling edit tool do?
Similar, it allows you to make, man, this is another hard one to explain. It allows you to make edits between two clips that are next to each other or touching each other, should I say, without similar to the ripple, but it's only affecting those two clips and not the whole entire timeline.
Correct. So I'm going to show that too. Whenever you're using the rolling edit tool, if you are selecting it, you can see it's only selecting those two clips. And when they are adjusting it back or forward, it's not moving any of the rest of the clips in the timeline. It's just affecting these two. It's stopping, it's either taking away some of the blue clip and adding some of the pink, or vice versa. But it's not affecting the clip on the left and the clip on the right all the way. So using that tool will just get you to do some really small edits in between clips. If you have a cut you want to adjust, but you don't want to move the entire timeline around. You just want to affect those two clips alone. All right, going to equipment. Priscilla, what is the difference in a fog and a haze machine?
Haze is more. Sorry. Haze is more for the entire room. It makes things a little softer, a little blurrier. Fog is more cloudy and stays in what normally stays like clustered around one location.
Correct.
It's thicker as well.
Correct.
But
let me show
like
that real quick. So
but
haze
like
would look something more like this. It'll look a little smoky in the room, leaving some light rays going through, passing through light beams. And it spreads throughout the room, like you said. With fog, let me see, fog film. With fog, it looks more like this. It stays in one place. It looks kind of like a cloud that's sitting in the air or sitting out near the ground if it's chilled. The other difference between these two machines is that a haze machine doesn't need to warm up. It just goes continuously until it runs out of the liquid. Fog machines have to take time to get ready to warm up, so they have a warm up period. So you have to prepare for that before each shot, and it can take a little longer for your production to get done if you're not prepared for it. V, are fog and haze machine liquid solutions interchangeable between the two machines?
No.
Correct. If you tried to use fog solution in a haze machine or a haze solution in a fog machine, you could damage those machines because they are not the same. They may look or seem the same, but they are not. They are made out of something different for a different use case. And you'll break your machine if you do it too much. So avoid it. Moving to budget. Brian, for a union project, what is considered an ultra low budget?
Union ultra low?
Yeah, they have like a specific number they give. And if you have a budget that's this or below, it changes like the
Union, I think it's like what, 100,000 for union?
it's way more than that. So for a union project, an ultra low budget, they consider to be 2,750,000 or less.
Okay, yeah, that I was gonna say.
Yeah, and that's what they consider to be ultra low budget. And if it is, then you can basically haggle your pay with some of the crew members. As long as it's above minimum wage, you're allowed to haggle their pay. If it's above that, then you have to start falling under the actual union pay rates, and they'll give determined based on where you are, what you're doing, if it's a film or a TV show, and all those other things, and what your budget is. And it'll fall in different tiered budgets. But yeah, for the union, an ultra low budget is considered to be $2,750,000 or less. So that's quite a bit. Priscilla,
Mm.
for union projects, what are the standard hours? Like when you only have to pay them at a rate of 1 instead of 1.5 or 2.
If I'm not mistaken, it's 8 hours. If it goes to 10, you already have to start paying them time and a half.
Correct. So 1 to 8 hours is standard. So if you have a day of a union project, a day should be 8 hours or less. If it goes over 8 hours, between 8 and 12 hours, you have to start paying them 1.5 times. So time and a half. And if it goes over 12 hours, those hours you have to start paying double time. So if you have a really long set, 16 hours, 4 hours, you're going to pay double. 4 hours, you'll pay time and a half, and the rest will be standard pay rate. So union can get really expensive if you're behind schedule.
Heck, even if you're not.
Yeah. V, with editing, when exporting, if you have time, which option would be the best? VBR, which stands for variable bitrate, VBR 2-pass, or CBR, which stands for constant bitrate. One of these will take an extra long time, but is usually the best compared to all the rest.
It's the last question from Monday's, one of the last questions from Monday's thing.
And you said if you have time, meaning spare no expense, correct?
It's not expensive, but as long as you have the time for it, yeah.
Honey,
Yes.
expense just means like spare no, it's an expression. It doesn't mean like you're actually gonna,
Yeah.
yeah,
As-
it can mean like
Several
don't cut corners.
VBR.
Yep. But there's VBR or VBR 2-pass.
VBR regular. The first one. I don't know how you go.
Now 2-pass is actually going to be better. It's going to go through it twice, and it's going to like change it around a little bit more.
It's okay. I didn't feel confidence in the way you said the first one. Anyway.
Okay.
What? It's like me with the other
So
question.
it takes a lot longer because it's going through twice instead of just going through once. So it's going to take longer because it has to do the whole thing over again. But it will help keep this file size down without losing quality. And variable bitrate is always better than constant bitrate because during your scene or your film or your TV show or whatever it is, you're going to have certain frames are going to need more information. There's going to be more things changing. There's going to be more movement in them. There's going to be more things to compile together. If you've used visual effects, an explosion scene will need more information than a scene of somebody sitting still. So variable bitrate will give more data to the explosion spot and less to the sitting scene, where constant bitrate will just try to keep everything exactly the same no matter how much data it has. So you might have the sitting scene looking really good, but the explosion part looks really kind of bad because it's not giving as much data as it needs to. So variable bitrate is always better. And variable bitrate 2-pass is always better because it's going to make the file size smaller without losing any quality that it would in the regular variable bitrate. Brian,
Woohoo!
what is arguably the main sound editing tool, or at least the first one you'll use when you start editing sound around?
I love it when you say arguably because you mean like it's not always, but more often than not.
I would say it is, and most people say it is, but I don't want to have anybody be like, no.
Well, technically it's this. Yeah.
Sound
Brian?
editing, volume gain.
I would say EQ. Because that
Yeah.
is, it's determining how loud or quiet certain frequencies are.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
usually the one that people talk about right when they start talking about editing sound around. You're talking about EQ. I can see, yeah, loudness and gain is probably the more
That's where it
obvious
becomes
choice. Like the one used more often, especially with just like adjusting the sound around.
like you said, it's arguably. 'Cause
Yeah.
like, I mean, I go for EQ as well, but like you said, like it depends on who did your sound. Like I just got through a Zoom meeting with the 48-hour film fest. They did a Zoom meeting about sound, and one of the guys was talking about how he when he's recording, he brings the volume all the way down so his sound bar isn't moving at all, and then he'll make a noise to see if it's moving. And I was like, well, that works because he's trying to eliminate like the possibility of it getting in, which is cool. But like when you put it in your editor, it's going to be like super low. So that way you're going to have to put a lot of volume and gain into it, and it's going to introduce a lot of extra noise, electronic noise. So
Yeah,
then
it's not going to sound very good.
yeah, and I was explaining that to him, and he's like, yeah, da, da, da. Well, then you just put an EQ on it, and I was like, I'd rather not.
Yeah, the less you can do with it, if you can get it sounding good at first, why?
'Cause
Why
I'll
just,
get sound from people that do that. They're so afraid of the sound peaking, so that they'll record with the gain extra low, but it doesn't really help because then I have to put that gain back in editing, and then I have to go, So for me, I don't know, just like you said, it is arguably, but EQ is a good one too.
Yeah.
You're absolutely.
All right, Priscilla.
Yeah.
What is picture lock?
Picture lock is the first edit that you show, basically like the oh no, wait, never mind. Picture lock is when you've done all the edits and the rough edit, and you've basically locked it at this edit. Like this is the final edit, the one we're going to go with.
Yeah, it's when picture edit's complete. There's going to be no more changes made to it, so that sound, music, visual effects can all begin their work.
Yeah.
Moving on to equipment. V. What is Warbler for props and costumes?
That word still sounds funny to me.
Warbler.
Yeah.
Warbler for props and costumes.
I swear that sounds like a name of an alien planet from some show or cartoon. Heard it before, I'm sure of it.
Oh boy. It's like it's something from like I don't know.
No problem. All right, so Warbler is a thermoplastic, and what that is if you heat it up, it's going to be able to shape itself without falling apart or getting ruined. So you're able to heat it up, shape it in whatever way you want. And Warbler, I'm not sure if this is for all thermoplastics or just Warbler, the company itself, but when you heat Warbler up, it can stick to itself, kind of like if you were trying to put glue on something. So you heat it up, stick it to another piece, and you can start layering it, kind of like in this picture, making any kind of design you'd like. And it's often used for different props, different costumes, and things like that. Warbler also has different types of their stuff. Some are see-through or transparent, call it transpart. Some are black, and the regular one is just like this kind of a cardboard looking one. But you can have a few other types like pearly and different colors if you want it, if you don't want to have to paint it from the get-go. If you want to start with one of these, they have different variations. Brian, what are some materials props can be made out of?
Cardboard, styrofoam,
Yep.
Anything silk, fiberglass, wood, metal.
Yep.
Anything your imagination can think of. Anything.
What's the name of that plastic that creates fake glass?
Breakaway glass.
Breakaway glass. I don't remember that.
Tinfoil.
Yeah, pretty much anything. The main ones are like thermoplastics, like I was just showing, different kinds of foams, metal or silicone, that breakaway glass, plastic, and the ones that Brian was saying.
Anything you can create.
Pretty
that
much
was-
anything you can do with anything, as long as you have a material, you can turn it into something if you have the right tools to shape it.
And it looks somewhat halfway decent.
Yeah. For the most part, especially for cheaper prop making stuff, you'd use foams, silicone, or thermoplastics to get it done. But then if you want to get more expensive with it and make it more real, you start using the actual materials like wood, metal, glass, actual glass, and things like that to get it to look as real as possible. Priscilla, this is a budget question. What are some ways to gain finances for your project?
Well, there's a lot.
What are some of them?
And you can apply for a grant.
Yep.
You can look for investors.
Mhm.
You can take out a loan.
Yep.
You can enroll in programs. You
What kind of
can
programs?
like film study programs if you're in college, university courses, that kind of thing. There's internship programs that will like give you
Fellowships.
fellowships. Yes, that's what it is. Internship
Mhm.
fellowship programs that will give you some money for it. There's organizations that help religious groups, minorities, that kind of thing, create films.
I would say that falls under grants.
Oh, yeah, it's supposed to. Let me see. There, you can, save up. That's one.
Yeah. Out of pocket.
Rich parents. That's always great.
Friends and family. Yeah.
Although that one I would recommend the least because owing your family is really scary.
I think I would recommend loan the least.
Yeah, loan the least, then family. That's where my list would go. Because I feel like, whew.
Some other ways are tax incentives based on where you are. You might have some tax incentives to make films in your area, especially depending
Yeah,
on the
I was
budget.
about to say taxes. Yeah.
Crowdfunding or Patreon, if you're able to do those. Those
You
are
didn't
another
let me
avenue.
finish. I was gonna say that one too, but go ahead.
Oh, well, you okay.
No. You've already done. It's fine.
And then pre-sales. If you're able to get a deal where you can get a pre-sale done, usually not until you've had some kind of history making films and being successful with it. But you are sometimes able to get a pre-sale deal where they will give you the funding before you've made the thing based on your idea. And then all the rest that Priscilla said, grants, fellowships, investors, friends and family, out of pocket, and the rest. Editing question. V, what is the difference in an L cut and a J cut?
I'm thinking.
Are you looking it up?
Oh, I was saying I was thinking. Sorry, you didn't hear me.
No, I did. I was just kidding.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I am looking at my notes.
You wouldn't do that.
What'd you say?
I said you wouldn't do that.
No, I would.
I guess I trust you more than I should.
Oh boy. Okay. L cuts, J cuts.
I tell you, it has something to do with what?
Go ahead. Yeah, go on.
It has something to do with audio and how it interacts with the video of the cut. Does that help at all?
Sure.
Oh, like okay. No. Like the wave of the like when you're setting the audio to a certain way.
No, it's more like how the audio and video, if they're from the same clip, or if you cut one early or cut it later.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
All right, so the difference is an L cut will have the audio from that take lead into the next clip, where a J cut will have the audio from the next clip start before we see the video. So I use this one like if you have somebody thinking about something in their past, maybe they were on a date at the beach. We might see their face, but hear the audio of the next clip on the beach. So we hear the ocean and we hear the seagulls and stuff like that. And then playing around in the sand. And then we see what's happening. Whereas an L cut will have the audio from the current clip. So maybe he's talking about his memory and we cut to the video of the beach, but we're still hearing him talk. We're still hearing him talk about his date. That would be the audio leading into it, an L cut, where the J cut is the audio coming in before we see what's happening.
So a good way to remember that is just take what he said with the L cut. So you see a guy talking and then you cut to another shot, but the audio of the guy talking is still going. You could say the L is for leave the audio. So you're going to another shot, but you're leaving the audio still there from the previous shot. So think of L for leave the audio in there. And then J, I don't know why they picked the word J, but okay. Yeah.
Let me show real quick. The reason why they picked that is because of the shape of these letters. So they said like, you know, the audio is below the video. So if you go down the line of the letter L and then you start going over to the right, you'll see that the audio is still going that way while you're doing the cut. The cut is where the first part of the L is, you know, that's where the cut is. But the audio below it is still leading that way to the right. So that audio is going into the next clip. Where a J cut, even though it's not exactly the same shape, so it doesn't work as well, it has that shape at the bottom that is leading behind it. So you do the cut, but the audio is leading into it, if you can see.
Of those explanations, it's like, it's kind of sort of like a J, but not really, but kind of. So enough to where we name it that.
There you go. If you shape the J like that, it makes more sense.
Yeah, you have to shape it in a certain direction.
Well, these are often used a lot in like, it's not just used for scene transitions. They'll also be used in a scene itself. Like if somebody's having a conversation, you'll often see people's reactions while the other person is talking, which will be one or the other. It'll be an L cut or a J cut because one of the people will still be talking while the other person, we are looking at them and their reaction to it. So that's just, it's used all the time in editing to have something on screen while something audio from something else is coming through. All right. Brian, what is cutting on action?
Cutting on action is, so let's say a character raises his hand. So you would go from a medium shot and then you would cut to another angle of that action. So it could either be as his hand starts to go up, you can cut to another angle and then his hand, and then another shot, his hand is going into it, or you would have to pick where's the perfect time to cut on a specific or movement.
Yep, it's just cutting whenever there's an action. Whenever like this one, he's opening his jacket, showing weapons. So we're cutting so that we see what is happening. It's exactly what Brian said. It's cutting when there's movement, motivation to cut to a new angle when we want to see something. So whenever there's movement, we can watch the movement, but when a certain movement happens, like he stops, now we want to see the other side of things. So it gives a motivation or a reason to cut there. Like Brian said, figuring out when to do that is the tricky part. You know, they could cut right now as he's walking forward, but they choose to wait until he stops to look at what he's seeing. So there are different ways to do it, but cutting on action just means you are cutting when there is movement in the frame or a reason to go to that new angle because of some action somebody is doing in the frame. Priscilla, what
Yeah.
is cross-cutting?
I don't know how to explain it.
Cross-cutting is switching back and forth between scenes, often to make it feel as though those things are happening at the same time.
Oh wait, never mind. I was thinking that cross-cutting was something else. I know what it is.
Well, I just explained it, so you lose.
No. You know what I mean? Yes. But you
Wait
know
a
what I
minute, I
mean?
remember now that you said it.
I know.
I'm just kidding, I'm just messing with you.
I know. I just mean that when you said cross-cutting, instead of thinking of cross-cutting, which like the editing style, I was thinking it like as what you do in the editing app when you like cut things and go to from like one place to the other.
I think I know what you
You
mean.
know, yeah, when you're like speeding up the edit, like pushing it forward, pushing it back, that kind of thing. For some reason, that's what my brain thought at first, and then I was like, oh wait, I remember now. Cross-cutting, because we learned about that and blah, 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 and I remembered. I didn't even pay much attention to the explanation you were giving because I was trying to remember what cross-cutting was. But I know you won't, that is not a fair explanation because you already read what it was, so I could be full of shit. So just to be safe.
Now, if cross-cutting is just making it seem like two different scenes are happening at once, especially if you're going to lead a scene into something and you want to show the other side of it. I think I gave the example of people eating at dinner and a guy running, he just robbed a bank and he's running through the street. And so later in the scene, we're going to see that guy run past the window, and it's not going to make as much sense if we're not cross-cutting back and forth between him robbing and them at dinner. And it also helps intense. It can do it for comedic effect, or it can do it for dramatic effect to make tension rise because we're anticipating something happening. So that would be cross-cutting, where parallel editing is a cross-cutting technique, but it is used to parallel different things. Like you might parallel different planets, different ways people live. You're still cross-cutting back and forth between two things, but it doesn't necessarily have to be happening at the same time. It's just a parallel of each other. You are showing the differences or the parallel of those things happening.
Yep. I know, I get it. Man, I'm sorry. That was easy. I would have known that if I had given it more than a second before I responded.
That's fine. All right, V, this is an equipment question. What are some of the main components to consider for a computer for editing? When you're buying a computer, if you're going to put it together yourself, what are some of the main components you need to pay attention to whenever you're buying it?
Storage.
Yes.
And figuring out like your SD cards, like how you're going to be able to like read the memory of your cards and making sure that you're
the imports.
Yeah, the imports.
Yep.
Consider with just the computer.
Yeah, like just the internal pieces of the computer. You said storage. There can be SSD or HDD, and you want to determine which one you want and that kind of thing. There's also, I would say, 3 other main things that you want to consider to make sure your editing is going to go faster.
Okay, so not the software, but like maybe the speed, like how much internal memory?
Yeah, it could be, so that's RAM, like the random access memory. So how much RAM you have and the speed of that RAM is going to really help with editing. Yes.
Yeah, and then would you want to know like what kind of software you would want, or just not at all? Like you don't have to think about that for this question?
Well, if you're talking about getting a computer for a specific editing software, then yeah, you would want to pay more attention to one piece over another, because certain softwares will use different. Well, they'll use a different piece of hardware a bit more than some of the other ones. Some of them will distribute it a little more evenly, and some will be more focused on one or the other.
Okay. don't know why I was just thinking about like, weren't you saying something like the computer can warm up or something? Like you want to make sure your computer can handle like if it's editing for a really long time or something?
Yeah, so anytime you have any computer, whether you're editing or not, it's going to start heating up, which is why you have
Yeah.
fans.
Little-
Fans you
Yeah.
want to put in to have some airflow so that cold air is coming in.
And now it has a good
Hot air is
cooling
coming out.
system, how many fans it has, how
Yeah.
strong they are, that kind of thing.
Then was that part of the 3 that you were looking for or no?
How big they are too.
It is part, but not one of the ones I was like mainly considering when you're talking about editing. That one is just that one's more for like any computer you have. You need to make sure that it has some kind of airflow, otherwise it's going to overheat. I can go ahead if you want.
What is the oh, I'll let you finish. I was just trying to remember the name of something, but it has
Oh, sorry. The only other thing would be like the resolution, like depending on what you filmed on, like if the camera you filmed with, and seeing like how that could either downgrade your like whatever your system's resolution is or something like that.
That's more for a
Maybe?
monitor.
Oh, okay. All right. I don't know.
Did you say anything about processors?
No, so that is one of the components that you need to consider is a processor.
Yeah,
There's
because
going
I
to
was
be a
going to say
different
one of
speed,
my
different, how fast it can do, how many different
because that is a
cores it
real
has, which is how many processes it can handle at once, that kind of stuff.
because that is a really really main thing, because if you have a weak processor, it's not going to be able to you're not going to be able to edit at all. It's not going to load, it's not going to be able to handle the heavy files. It's just going to be a mess, as I learned the hard way.
Yeah. Yeah, so the main components I would say are the processor or the CPU. Those are the same, different names for the same thing. The RAM, you already said memory. So RAM would be what you want to look for when you're talking about memory. And storage, you already said, which is like long-term memory, which is just how much it can save and how fast it can load the opening all the apps and all of that type of stuff. And then the last thing is the graphics card or the GPU, same name, I mean, different names for the same thing. And that is to display graphics on a monitor quickly. So whenever you're doing any kind of editing, or especially with any kind of like After Effects titling and graphics and those kind of things, it's going to be using graphics cards quite a bit. Whereas, different software like a Premiere Pro will probably focus a lot more on a processor. You were saying software, so that is why you want to consider software for what kind of pieces of equipment you want to look more into. Like you want to spend more money on a GPU if you're mainly going to be using After Effects. But if you're going to be mainly using Premiere Pro, you might want to focus more, put more money into the CPU or the processor to make sure that you have a quick processor that can handle it, because it's going to utilize that more than it will a graphics card. And then other softwares like DaVinci Resolve, they have it a little bit more balanced, where they're kind of using both the graphics card and the processor to do the editing and the visual effects stuff. So it depends on what software you're using, like you said, but those are the 4 main things I would say you would look for when looking to buy a computer and build it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Brian, is an HDD or SSD usually faster for storage?
I want to say HDD.
Nope, it's actually SSD.
SSD.
Yep. HDD is a hard drive disk, and it actually has like a spinning disk to read the memory, where a SSD stands for solid state drive. I'm not exactly sure how it works, but basically it's able to open up the information a lot quicker because it's not using a physical moving thing like a disk. So it typically is faster, but they are much more expensive for the same amount of memory that you would get with an HDD, which is why there's a toss-up between the two. So usually a lot of people will recommend getting an SSD that has a lower storage amount, just for editing your current project, and HDD, like a larger hard drive, just for storing your projects after you're done editing them, as well as the external hard drives for storing them long-term or archiving them after you're finished. Priscilla,
Yes.
what is RAID 0, RAID 1, and RAID 10?
I knew once you gave that little laugh. RAID 0, RAID 10, and RAID 1. Are the three ones you said?
RAID 0, RAID 1, and RAID 10.
Okay, they are the shoot. I don't know how to explain it, but they're the thingies that determine like how your data gets distributed and uploaded. And RAID 0, it separates your data into two separate ones, but it like does one half on one side and one half on the other side. So if you lose half of it, you lose but not like one half on one side, one half on the other side, like 50-50. It's more like 1, 2, 3, 4, right?
You talking about RAID 0 or RAID 1?
Wait, is 1 like that and 0 half and half, 50-50?
Yeah.
Okay, so 0 is 50-50 and 1 is like 1 on one side, 2 on the other, 3 on one side, 4 on the other.
No, that's 0.
Oh, so then I was right. You're confusing me.
You said 50-50.
No, I said is 0's the one that's like 1, then 2, then 3, then 4, like not 50-50, right? Like that's I was asking.
Okay, can I explain it? Because you're confusing me.
I know what it is. I know what it is. I just don't know how to explain it.
Okay, RAID 0, it is 50-50. It splits the data into two separate hard drives so that it's faster, so that it can read and write through the information a lot quicker. It does do the 1 over on the left, 2 on the right, 3. So those are blocks of data. It's sending half of it to drive 1, half of it to the second hard drive. And that way those hard drives can work together really quickly. The problem is if one of them malfunctions or fails, all of your data is lost because then you don't have the complete amount of data because half your data is on hard drive 2, half of it's on hard drive 1. Is that what you meant? Because you said 50-50 and I was like, yeah.
That's what I meant because I was trying to remember. Wait, 0 is the one that's like that and 1 is the one that's like 50% on one side, 50%, because I know they're both divided, but one of them is like it breaks it down.
I'll just RAID 1 is not 50-50. RAID 1 copies the data to two different hard drives. You'll have you'll have the same information, but it'll be on both.
I'm not explaining it well. Okay.
I know. That's why I'm trying to explain it before you confuse us.
I'm not explaining it well, but I know what it is. I was just trying to make sure that 1 was what I thought it was and 0 was what I thought it was, because I know that there's a difference between the two.
Gotcha. I just got confused because you're saying 50-50 for both. So I didn't know what you meant by that.
Yeah, I didn't know how to explain that.
All right, so RAID 0 is for speed. It doesn't really have any backup data. It just tries to get stuff to be opening and closing quicker because it's reading and writing the data really quickly by splitting the tasks to two different hard drives at once. RAID 1, it's copying the information to both hard drives. So you have a backup hard drive inside your computer. If one of them fails, all of your data is still on the other one. So as you're saving a new file, it's going to be saved to both hard drives at once. You don't have to save it to one and then the other. It's going to do it itself. The problem with RAID 1 is you lose half of your storage space because it's copying the information to two different hard drives. You don't have the full amount of storage space that you would. RAID 0, you'll still have the full amount of storage space, but you won't have any backups. So if one of them fails, you lose all of your data, which is really bad. RAID 10 is a combination of RAID 0 and RAID 1. It uses RAID 0 to split up the tasks evenly between 4 different hard drives. So 2 will have half of the data, and the other two on the other side will have the other half of the data so that it can read it quickly. And then it'll use RAID 1 to copy the data to 2 hard drives. So the 2 on the left will be copied to each other. The 2 on the right will be copied to each other. So if one of them fails, you'll still have all of your data because you can just take it from the others. If drive 4 fails, you'll still have all of that same data on drive 3, and you can use drive 2 or drive 1 and drive 3 to get all of your data complete. If both drive 3 and drive 4 fail, your whole system goes down because you don't have these blocks of data, 2, 4, 6, 8, because it was split to that side. It's a little rare, but if you're using them hardcore and you're using them a lot, it's more likely that your hard drives will start failing. Obviously, it's not that big of a deal if you're not using them too much, because I've never had a problem with mine and I only use one hard drive on most of my systems, but RAID is just there for a backup if you're using them for intense purposes, especially when you're editing and you want to make sure you don't lose all your data, especially if you've spent a bunch of money on it. It can get more and more complex from there, but I'll just leave it at that. RAID systems are just used for reliability and speed to help speed up the processes and to help make sure you have a backup in case something goes wrong. You don't want to lose all your data and lose all of your footage.
Mm-hmm. And I knew what it was, just making it clear.
What?
I just didn't know how to explain it.
Okay. That's fine. I didn't know what you meant by 50-50.
No, I know. I'm just clearing things up. I'm just saying,
V, what is the average shot duration in most films? This is an editing question. So the average length of different shots, if you take all the shots in a film, most films, and then look at the average length, it'll be between this amount of time, this many seconds.
This many seconds. Like 65 seconds?
No. So it's like how long we stay on one shot without cutting to the next one.
Oh, okay. I don't know that one.
It's 4 to 6 seconds. So generally speaking, yeah, the average is going to be about 4 to 6 seconds. We're seeing one shot for that long, and then we're switching to another angle or a different side or going back and forth between a conversation. We won't stay on one character for too long. It'll be 4 to 6 seconds, and then we'll cut to the next. Obviously, depending on what's happening, you might stick on something for 10 to 15 to longer amounts of seconds, but the average boils down to 4 to 6. The minimum can be half a second or less, while the maximum can be up to like 65 seconds or whatever, depending on what you are showing. And how much movement the camera has will also affect if you feel like you need to cut to a new thing or not.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Brian, what are proxies in editing?
Proxies are like duplicates of footage, original or raw footage that is used to edit because the file sizes are so smaller. It helps with editing speed. And then once it's time to final render, they take the original files and swap them.
Correct. Yep. Proxies are just they're lower resolution copies, so that if you're shooting 4K, 6K, even if you have a really good computer with all those good components, sometimes they're just not able to handle that amount of data at the speed that they need to. So sometimes what editors will do is make what's called proxies, which are what Brian said, the copies. They're just lower resolution copies so that you can edit it. And then at the end, either your system or you'll have to manually swap out the low resolution footage with the original files, which are 4K, 6K, or however large the resolution was, so that you can use the highest quality version when you're exporting it to whatever you're exporting it to. Priscilla.
Yes, master.
What are some of the most popular video editors?
Well, Da Vinci, I guess, but even though it's technically more of a color
I would say
grading.
yes. Yep.
The one. Wait a minute. Words. It was on the. Give me a minute. Don't say it. Let me think. It starts with a P. Final Cut Pro.
Yep, that's one.
What's the one that people use?
That
a
starts with an
lot?
F though.
No, I know that's not.
I
what
know, I'm
thinking. Shut
kidding. Calm down. You just said starts with a P and then you said Final Cut.
I'm thinking. Anyway, let me think. And crap, what's the name of that other one? Is Final Cut the Android one or the Apple one?
Apple one.
Okay, then the one I'm thinking is
Android. You mean like PC?
yeah. That's the one.
Gotcha.
I forget. Oh crap! What's the name of that third one? Don't tell me. Think. I just drew a blank right now. I know it, but I drew a blank. I get nervous.
All right. I'm not rushing you. Bum bum bum.
Whatever, you say it. Fine, you say it.
You know it.
No. Get away.
Brian or V, would you guys like to try? So she said Final Cut, Da Vinci.
Movie Magic. Oh,
Yeah,
wait, is
I
that
guess.
one?
I mean, I wouldn't count that as one of the main ones, but yeah, that could be.
Las
Or like
Vegas.
Vegas Pro, yeah, that one.
Oh,
I thought
Premiere.
it was Sony Vegas, but I was like, is it though? And so I didn't.
It is.
It
No
would like
offense,
be. It's
Brian.
not one of the most popular, but I would say it's like under the main four that are used right now.
Yeah, because I always hear top three in my of people talking about them. So it's always like DaVinci Resolve, Final Cut Pro, and the other one that for some reason refuses to come into my brain.
Premiere Pro.
Yep.
Premiere. I told you it starts with a P.
Premiere Pro, yes.
I told you it started with a P.
The last one that's still used in the industry and isn't as well known for the independent scene is Avid Media Composer. That's one of the other most popular ones used. So yeah, Premiere Pro, Avid Media Composer, Final Cut, DaVinci Resolve, and on a lesser extent, I would say Sony Vegas Pro.
Oh, I thought it was Las Vegas.
Las Vegas Pro. All right. V, what is an NLE? What does it stand for? This is an editing question.
Huh. I don't know why it's like non-linear.
Yep.
Oh, I'm right. Oh.
Yep. NLE is nonlinear.
Okay, hold on now. Okay, let's see. Linear.
If you're anything like me, you're just gonna say non-linear in a bunch of words until it sounds like it makes sense.
Oh my gosh. Non-linear equalizer?
Editor.
Editor. Okay, that was close.
Yeah, it's a nonlinear editor. The only reason I mention it is because everyone who talks about editing, they always just say NLE instead of editor. So as long as you know what NLE is, you'll be like, okay, they're just talking about Premiere Pro, Avid, Final Cut, DaVinci. Any of those are NLE. They're nonlinear because you don't have to go in order like you used to back when you were editing film, when you had to actually go through the film stock in order in a linear editing fashion. So any editor today is an NLE, pretty much, if it's a digital one. Brian, what is the difference between color correcting and color grading?
Save that one specifically for me.
What was
Color
that?
grade. I said you saved that one specifically for me.
Don't you feel special?
For me, color grading is adjusting exposures and adding a specific style and color to the footage. Color correcting is pretty much fixing flaws that came into your raw file through camera. Saying, let's say you have what do you call it? An unbalanced white balance. You would color correct it to fix that. If you have an over or underexposed shot, that could possibly fall under color correcting as well. But for the most part, it's pretty much correcting any flaws in your footage for color correcting. Color grading is an artistic style that you add to your footage.
Correct. Yep. Color correcting is just more technical. It's more like used to, like you said, white balance or get the exposure, even if you have crushed blacks or too bright of whites. Try to even out those exposures a little bit. Basically, with color correcting, you're just trying to make it look real, like it would if you were on set during that shot. Color grading is where that creative style comes in, where you are able to stylize it, giving it a different color or exposing it differently to give it a different emotion. You might make it darker, take out some of the saturation, make it a little more cold and gloomy feeling. If you're going for more of a sad moment or lonely moment, where you might make it a bit brighter, oversaturate it, giving it a higher exposure levels so that you can make it a little bit more happy and friendly feeling whenever you show a clip, if somebody's supposed to be happy or they were successful in something. So color grading is where you're trying to match the emotion of the story and have your stylized look to it. Color correcting is technical, where you're just trying to make it look natural so that it's not looking weird or different than it should be. And that is it. You color correct first and then you color grade later. But yeah, that's it, everybody. That's the questions. Thanks for participating. As you can see, this is why nobody comes to these. Everyone gets nervous. It's mainly just to go over the stuff again, refresh on it, and just to remember some of the stuff we went over, and so we can carry it on with us later on.
And also it helps us think about it, which means we remember it more. At least for me, like that's how it works for me a lot. Like if I'm asked it a bunch, I'll memorize it. Chance of me memorizing it will be higher.
So the last thing I'm going to talk about today is just talking about the next semester. Next semester is our 5th semester for this group. We are going to have one more after that one, and then we will be done with this media studies group. So we have a few more topics and subjects we want to cover before we end this. But next semester we are going over, the main thing is going to be production design, and distribution will be like right underneath that. And then television, how television differs from film whenever you are talking about writing, when you're talking about budgeting and financing and different things, how television differs from film. Because we've been talking about film mostly this whole entire group, all the rest of the semester. So we're going to delve into television and how it differs. Some of the roles in television are a bit different, even if they have the same title, like director. A director on a film will be a bit different than a director on television, because directors on television only do per episode or a few episodes a season. So they don't have as much creative input as they do on a feature film, where they are the main creative say in the project. Production design, we're going to be looking into it a lot more for props, for miniatures, for color. We're going to look a lot into color theory, how it affects film, and how the production designer will work with, and the director, the cinematographer, and the other people within the set, within the crew, to have collaboration and make sure they get the look of the film right. So the production designer and the production design itself is a pretty large team, and depending on what film you are making or what TV show you're making, it's going to take up a huge part of your budget because things have to be created. They have to be designed. The looks of costumes, the looks of the location that you're at, the room and how it reflects the character and what they're going through. And all those things will be talked about and we'll go over and go over for production design. Next semester, we are going to do 4 different exercises and they are all going to be based in production design. Our 4 movies will be for production design. So we'll watch one based on color, one based on the concept and creation. So like creating a whole new world that it doesn't exist. So fantasy, sci-fi, or something else like that. Miniatures and how to use miniatures to make a scene work. And props. And we'll look at 4 different movies that utilize these the best. And then we will create our own exercises based on those. Distribution, we'll delve more into some of the stuff we've already gone over for financing and budgeting and things like that. Some of that stuff bleeds into distribution. And we'll discuss what you need to have whenever you're trying to get a distribution deal. Some of the things to look out for. When there are scams out there, there are some sketchy distributors out there that try to get a better deal than they should be able to, especially for low independent productions. So you need to look out for some things and we'll discuss what that stuff is. And we'll just talk about the different things you might need whenever you're trying to get a distribution deal, like a quality control report, a dialogue list, and continuity script and things like that. All these words that mean certain things and certain forms that you need to have so that you have the legal and just professional pieces that you need to get a distribution deal for your project. So that's the stuff we're going over. Does anyone have any questions, comments, or anything?
Not that I can think of, really. Just that I'm actually, like I said again, really excited for this semester. I feel like it's a lot more stuff that I've been studying and looking into and stuff that I know a little bit more about. So I'm going to feel at least a little more confident about it.
Cool. Yeah, it's not as many terms. This will be more about the creative aspect of like designing things and the producer side of things, of like the business side of film with distribution. And then, just the television. And, it's very different. Even television is for a sitcom or animation is very different from television for a hour-long drama. How long are the seasons? What determines the episode count per season? How do you do the budget? All those things are different depending on what you are working on and what kind of TV you're doing. We aren't going to be talking about reality TV and stuff like that. We're going to be talking more about narrative projects, which could be animation, sitcoms, or dramas.
Like I would say, even the company in which you're working for makes a difference. Like depending on the production company, they might delegate certain restrictions or certain things for their shows.
Yeah, that's true. And also, if you are going to try to get on broadcast TV, there are certain things you have to look out for and certain requirements have to be met for the colors and the sound and all of that, so that they can and like interlaced compared to progressive scanning, which we were talked about the other day or the other semester, I think. Interlace is used for broadcast. So different things have to be taken into consideration if you are trying to shoot a project for broadcast TV compared to trying to shoot it for a streaming service or internet distribution, stuff like that. So all that will be talked about next semester, but thank you guys. Oh, the last thing, next semester is going to start on May 2nd and go through August 13th. So we'll have about two weeks off. Yeah, well, about 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks from now, we'll start back up on our next semester.
We know it's hard, but we'll be back soon.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for coming. Thanks for watching.
Guys. Hope you guys have a good time off, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.
All right, bye, guys.